Even though I know a lot of people are constantly talking about open-world games these days, I also know there are still players like us who love linear games and are always waiting for new ones to come out. In this video, we're going to talk about linear-focused games that actually take you from point A to point B without forcing you to walk for hours just to reach a single main mission in a massive open world. If you're ready, let's get started. Alan Wake 2. Remedy really flipped things upside down with Alan Wake 2, and I think they did it completely on purpose. Writer Alan Wake is trapped in a dark dimension, and to escape, he has to turn the boundary between reality and fiction into fiction itself. At the same time, FBI agent Saga Anderson is in the real world, following the traces he leaves behind. These two narrative layers constantly feed into each other. One scene ends, another begins, and you start to feel disoriented. And I think that feeling of being lost is completely intentional. The game speaks the language of both horror and psychological thriller, but honestly, it carries its weight somewhere different than either of those genres. Because it's built on a meta-narrative, the chapter structure feels like a novel. The scene transitions are genuinely cinematic, and they're supported by live-action performances. The visual identity is consistent and confident in what it's trying to do. It does start a bit slow, but once you're in, I think it's really hard to stop playing. Remedy clearly knew exactly what kind of game they wanted to make, and that clarity shows in every layer of the experience. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Cal Kestis is back, and this time, I think he's much better. Survivor takes everything Fallen Order built and expands it with a much bigger vision. While the fight against the Galactic Empire continues, Cal's struggle with his past and identity adds real emotional weight to the story. Lightsaber combat is much deeper now, with new stances and combos. You can switch between 5 different stances instantly, even in the middle of combat, and each one offers a completely different rhythm. The Souls-like influence is still here, but I think Survivor makes it way more accessible. The environments are larger, and exploration feels far more rewarding. Some areas are locked until you unlock new abilities, which adds a light Metroidvania feel that really enhances the sense of discovery. But in my opinion, the real strength of Survivor is its set-piece design. Some moments are visually among the most impressive scenes ever created in a Star Wars game. It had technical issues at launch, but most of them have been fixed with updates. If you like the series, I honestly think this is a must-play.
Right.
A Plague Tale: Innocence. Rats. Millions of rats. Welcome to one of my favorite games. Set in 14th century France during the Black Death, Amicia and her little brother Hugo are forced to rely on each other to survive. And I think the best thing this game does is slowly and honestly build the relationship between these two characters. At the beginning, they almost feel like strangers, but as the game progresses, they become truly dependent on each other, and that bond becomes the emotional core of the entire story. The gameplay focuses on stealth and puzzles. The rat swarms act as environmental hazards. You control them with light, stay in the shadows, and try to manipulate your surroundings to survive. There's almost no direct combat because you're not powerful, and I think that sense of vulnerability is exactly what creates the game's tense atmosphere. Asobo Studio didn't have a massive budget, but they had vision, and in my opinion, Innocence is the purest form of that vision. Atmosphere, character writing, and gameplay all support each other perfectly. If you want to play the sequel, Requiem, you have to start here. There's no skipping this one, and honestly, you'll understand why this series is so highly praised. Senua Saga Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 doesn't let you relax. The sound design built around Senua's psychosis goes beyond just a technical achievement. The voices whispering in your head, the comments coming from different directions, and that constant blur between reality and illusion, that's the core of the experience. This time, the story expands into a wider Viking setting, but the focus is still on Senua's inner journey. Visually, the game is incredible. Almost every frame looks like a photograph, and I think this is one of the best showcases of what Unreal Engine can really do. The gameplay is slow, heavy, and almost ritualistic. The combat is cinematic, but mechanically simple, and the game knows that. So instead of depth in combat, it puts its depth elsewhere, in sound design, environmental puzzles, and the way it handles Senua's mind. The whole experience lasts around 6 hours, but when it ends, I think you genuinely feel like something has changed. It's not for everyone, but if this is the kind of experience you're looking for, there's honestly nothing else quite like it. And one more thing, play it with headphones. I really think it completely transforms the experience. Control. Control feels like a game that doesn't think it owes you explanations. And honestly, I think it's right. Jesse Faden arrives at the Federal Bureau of Control, where the director has mysteriously disappeared. The building itself shifts, writes its own rules, and supernatural threats wait on every floor. The brutalist architecture, with its cold and oppressive corridors, is one of the strongest elements carrying the atmosphere, and it stays consistent throughout the entire experience. The gameplay is incredibly satisfying. Jesse's kinetic abilities combined with the shape-shifting service weapon make every fight feel different. Lifting enemies with telekinesis and throwing them while shooting at the same time slowly turns into a rhythm you get addicted to. There's also this layer of bureaucratic satire, unresponsive elevators, unsolvable paperwork, inner voices, all working together to give the world a completely unique personality. It's a slow burn game, but once it opens up, I think it becomes something really captivating. The connections to Alan Wake add another layer of depth. In my opinion, this is easily one of Remedy's most original and boldest games. If you're looking for a game where your biggest enemy is endless bureaucracy, this is it. Silent Hill 2 Remake. When Bloober Team announced they were working on this remake, a lot of people were worried, and honestly that concern was valid. But the final result turned out way better than most people expected. James Sunderland comes to Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, who died years ago. That simple setup has led players to write endless theories trying to understand what's really going on beneath the surface. The remake preserves those layers while presenting them in a modern way, and in some areas I think it even rivals the original. The combat system is noticeably improved. Dodging, blocking, and melee transitions finally feel playable and responsive, making encounters feel more intense and alive. And the Pyramid Head encounters, still absolutely chilling. The sound design carries Akira Yamaoka's signature, and that heavy, suffocating atmosphere is fully intact. If you played the original, this feels nostalgic but fresh. If you didn't, I honestly think this is the best possible entry point. Still Wakes the Deep, an oil rig in the North Sea off the coast of Scotland. Honestly, not the kind of place you'd ever want to be. Cold, isolated, filled with the sound of metal groaning. You play as Kaz McLeary, an electrician who escapes to this platform after making some bad decisions, and then everything changes. The Chinese Rooms game is about 5-7 hours long, but in my opinion, the atmosphere and sound design it builds in that time stay with you much longer. The characters, brought to life with strong Scottish accents, feel like real people, and before you even fully get to know them, they're thrown into something terrible, and the game makes you feel exactly how much that matters. There's a Lovecraftian element to the body horror, but I think the real strength of the game isn't the chase sequences. It's the feeling of trying to move forward while everything around you is literally falling apart. It's short, but intense. It's also on Game Pass, so honestly, if you needed a reason to try it, this is already enough.
Honor, obedience. They set the man apart from the rest.
Mafia, the old country. The Mafia series steps away from open-world fatigue, and in my opinion, this decision works. Hangar 13 takes us to early 1900s Sicily, sun-scorched hills, stone walls, and a time when the Mafia wasn't fully organized yet, but was starting to form through instinct and survival. You play as Enzo Favara, joining Don Torrisi's family, and slowly learning the brutal rules of this world. The combat is heavily knife-focused, which is an authentic choice for the setting, but mechanically, I think it feels a bit limited. The real strength of the game comes from its visual richness, powered by Unreal Engine 5 and its cinematic storytelling. It's a focused 12-15 hour experience, and in my opinion, it's one of those rare games that doesn't waste your time. Don't go into it expecting deep gameplay. Go for the atmosphere, and you'll probably come out satisfied.
What have you got, Isaac?
Got the Ishimuras in the red. Engines, hull, the tramps.
Can you handle it alone?
Dead Space Remake. Stepping onto the Ishimura has never been easy. The original Dead Space in 2008 was groundbreaking, and Motive Studios' 2023 remake brings that same experience into a modern form while staying true to its roots. You play as Isaac Clarke, a space engineer who arrives to investigate a message from his wife, but what he finds is something far worse. The necromorphs completely change the rules of combat. You don't go for headshots, you target limbs, and this mechanic alone turns every weapon interaction into a different kind of strategy. The near-continuous camera perspective keeps the tension constant. The original map is preserved, but new story layers, missing characters, and additional dialogue have been added. A great remake doesn't just upgrade visuals, and I think this game fully understands why it exists. It respects the soul of the original while enhancing it. The sound design is one of its strongest weapons, preparing you before you even enter a room. This is still one of the strongest survival horror experiences out there, and honestly, after leaving the Ishimura, you might need a moment to breathe. Dishonored 2. This is another one of my personal favorites, and even after playing it multiple times, I never get bored. You choose between Corvo or Emily, each with their own unique abilities. Returning to the city of Karnaca, Emily's journey after losing her throne to a betrayal feels both personal and political. The abilities are incredibly bold in design. Emily's domino ability links multiple enemies together. Whatever happens to one affects them all. Is it a combat tactic, a puzzle solution, or a stealth tool? Honestly, it's all three. Each level doesn't feel rigid, it feels organic. You choose your path, and that path shapes itself around your decisions. And then there's the Clockwork Mansion level, which I think is a serious argument for how far game design can go. Playing Dishonored 2 feels like taking a masterclass in what great game design actually is.
Accept the sacred gift.
Resident Evil 4 Remake. The original Resident Evil 4 basically rewrote the rules of the genre back in 2000. Capcom's 2023 remake fully embraces that legacy, but it doesn't just copy it. Leon Kennedy heads to a remote European village to rescue the president's kidnapped daughter, and from the moment you arrive, it's clear that nothing here is normal. The remake keeps the original structure and even its slightly playful tone, but brings the combat system up to modern standards. The parry mechanic, in my opinion, completely transforms close combat. Your knife is no longer just a disposable tool, it's a core part of how you fight. Ashley's redesign is also a huge improvement. She's actually useful now, and somehow manages to be one of the least frustrating escort characters out there. The level design is excellent, the pacing between sections feels consistent, and some of the added content even touches on things the original never fully explored. And yes, the merchant is back. Of course, this game knows exactly why it exists. It's not just a visual upgrade, it's a true reinterpretation, and I definitely recommend the Separate Ways DLC too, since it fills in a perspective the original left unanswered.
Let's rock! This is awesome!
Hi-Fi Rush. Tango Gameworks made this game without asking anyone and just dropped it out of nowhere. You play as Chai, an average guy with big dreams, and the game blends rhythm mechanics with action in a way that feels completely fresh. Everything in the world moves with the music. Enemies attack on beat, the environment reacts to rhythm, even your combos sync with the soundtrack. At first, it might feel a bit gimmicky, but once it clicks, you realize something. You're not following the game, you're following the music. The visual style is vibrant, colorful, and intentionally cartoonish, and I think it fits the game perfectly. The comic book aesthetic mixed with cell shading works beautifully, while the soundtrack combines original tracks with licensed hits. The story isn't overly ambitious, but the characters are genuinely likable and fun to spend time with. Hi-Fi Rush feels like it was made for people who forgot what games are supposed to feel like. Once you play it, you get it. This kind of joy is rare. And the fact that Tango Gameworks released it without any prior announcement, that was bold, and it paid off completely.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Doom, The Dark Ages. Doom 2016 felt like a fighter jet. Eternal felt like an acrobat. The Dark Ages, it's a heavily armored tank. This time, id Software didn't choose speed, they chose weight, and in my opinion that decision completely changes how the game feels. You go back to the origins of the Doomslayer, fighting alongside the Night Sentinels in a medieval-inspired war against the forces of hell. The new shield mechanic sits right at the center of the experience. You can block attacks, parry at the perfect moment to counter, or launch it forward like a chainsaw to tear through enemies. When these systems come together, the combat builds its own rhythm. The weapon design is incredible, especially the Skull Crusher, which fires bone fragments and easily stands out as one of the craziest weapons in the series. The mech and dragon sequences are a bit controversial, but I think the change of pace actually helps prevent fatigue. It reached 3 million players in its first week and became the biggest launch in id Software's history. And if you've never played Doom before, this is actually a great starting point. Sifu. Sifu teaches you one simple thing. In this game, death is your teacher. You play as a young kung fu student whose family was killed in a single night. Every time you die, you come back older. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. You lose your youth, but you gain experience. It sounds like a cool idea, but when you actually play it, you realize how deeply this mechanic is integrated into the entire design. Slow Clap's combat system is, in my opinion, one of the best in recent years. You break enemy stances, read positioning, and react in real time. Every group of enemies requires a different approach, and learning those patterns is incredibly satisfying. When you make a mistake, you learn. When you find the rhythm, it almost feels like you're dancing. 5 levels, 5 bosses, and endless replay value. It's short, but incredibly tight. If you love kung fu movies, this is basically a must-play, and if you're aiming for platinum, you'll need multiple runs, and each time you'll discover something new. That layer of depth is exactly what earns it a spot on this list.
It's the only way to protect the ones we love.
God of War Ragnarök. Ragnarök carries the emotional weight left behind by the 2018 game, but I think it transforms that weight into something much bigger, both in terms of story and gameplay. Kratos is no longer just a warrior, he's a father, and Atreus is no longer just a son, he's someone carving his own path. The tension between them is the heart of this game, and it rises and falls almost like a piece of music. This time you actually get to visit all 9 realms, and each one has its own identity, tone, and secrets. The world feels alive in a way that constantly pulls you in. The combat is faster and more layered. I'd even say it feels more dynamic than something like Forbidden West. The Leviathan axe is still incredibly satisfying, but the new additions really expand the system instead of replacing it. Boss fights are well designed, and some of the final encounters are easily among the best in the entire series. And honestly, by the time you reach the ending, everything you feel makes the entire journey worth it. This is without a doubt one of Sony's best games, but I wouldn't recommend starting here without playing the 2018 game first.
To the Hellraiser who kills these so-called gods.
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. When this game first came out, nobody really had high expectations. The disappointment from the Avengers game was still fresh, and I think that's exactly why Guardians of the Galaxy ended up being such a great surprise. Eidos Montreal created its own version of the Guardians, completely separate from the MCU, and instead of controlling the whole team, you only play as Star-Lord. The other 4 members fight alongside you in real time, following your commands. But in my opinion, the real strength of this game isn't the combat, it's the characters. The Guardians never stop talking, and surprisingly, most of the dialogue is actually well written. The dynamic between Rocket and Drax alone has some of the best moments in the entire game. The licensed 80s soundtrack kicks in at just the right moments, and when it does, it elevates those scenes in a big way. Yes, the game is a bit long and some sections lose their pacing, but overall, it's way better than people expected. Honestly, this might be the most unfairly overlooked game on this list. If you haven't played it, you really missed out. And the best part, it's usually available at a discounted price now, so if you were hesitant because of Avengers, I think you should definitely give this one a chance. It's a completely different experience.
I made a promise that I was done with this life. It's not what it looks like.
Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Closing Nathan Drake's story was never going to be easy. This game doesn't just wrap up a hero's journey. It also explores aging, the pull of the past, and what it really means to let go. With the introduction of Sam Drake, the story shifts into something deeper. Brotherhood, past decisions, and unresolved history all become central to the narrative. Naughty Dog really pushed their storytelling to the next level here. The environmental storytelling, the character animations, and the dynamic set pieces are, in my opinion, among the best in the entire industry. Gameplay-wise, this is the smoothest the series has ever been. The grappling hook adds a new level of mobility, and the way you interact with the environment feels more creative than ever. Some sections are slower paced, but I think that's intentional. Those quieter moments set up the action that follows. And the ending? It closes the story in a way that truly respects the entire series. If you love Drake, this is the perfect farewell. Detroit: Become Human. This is one of the best examples of pure interactive storytelling that we've seen in gaming. You play as 3 android characters. Connor represents order, Marcus represents freedom, and Kara represents survival. Each of their stories evolves based on the choices you make, not just for them, but for the entire world around them. The gameplay is mostly built around dialogue choices, environmental exploration, and quick decisions. It sounds simple, but I think the branching structure is where the game really shines. You can replay the same scene with different choices and end up with completely different outcomes. Characters can die, and when they do, the story changes permanently. The game explores themes like AI rights, what it means to be human, and prejudice, and these ideas drive the tension throughout the entire experience. The writing isn't perfect everywhere, but when it hits emotionally, it really hits. And in those moments, this becomes one of the most powerful narrative-driven games on this list.